Shigesato Itoi is a popular celebrity in Japan, well known for his crowning achievement as a game designer. Itoi's creation is directly responsible for the formation of one of the most popular cult gaming communities. The fans of this series have come together with their love and commitment and accomplished things that many thought impossible. This is only the beginning of that story. This is the Mother 1 Iceberg. What's in a name? The RPG known as Mother takes place in modern America and follows the story of a young boy named Ninten, along with his friends who use their skills and magical powers to stop an alien invasion. But it's possible that you've never heard of it before due to its odd naming situations. Mother is known by several different names, due to Mother 2 releasing internationally as Earthbound. The naming convention for this first game became muddied. Many refer to the game simply as Mother 1, but simply calling it Mother is also accepted. The name Earthbound 0 is another fairly common name used throughout the years, although it fell out of fashion after Nintendo later officially localized the game internationally as Earthbound Beginnings in 2015. Lost in translation. After its release in Japan, Nintendo fully intended to make Mother 1 available internationally. Following the success of Final Fantasy in the West, Nintendo asked Phil Sandhop, the man responsible for its localization, to work on Mother 1. Sandhop and his team had a huge challenge ahead of them in translating the game's unique style of humor and dialogue. Many gameplay improvements were implemented, such as a run button and a more fleshed out ending. The script was entirely completed and Nintendo even began advertising the game as Earthbound in Nintendo Power. But even though all of the pieces were in place, the game was held back from release. I'm sure you could point to several things like Nintendo's marketing analysis not showing the best data, or that the Super Nintendo would be releasing soon. Whatever the reason, Mother 1 did not release internationally on the NES. Years later, in 1998, a prototype cart popped up on a retro gaming auction site. The buyer ended up striking a deal with a group of dedicated fans who intended on translating the game themselves. They agreed to pay $400 to borrow the cart and dump the ROM. After just a few adjustments were made, the ROM released online as Earthbound 0 to differentiate between the Earthbound released on the Super Nintendo. Many people doubted the legitimacy of the cart, but after Phil Sandhop himself was asked about it, he said, "Without a doubt, that game's text is what I wrote." This version of the game would go on to be released as Earthbound Beginnings. A rocky start. When Itao originally presented the game idea to Shigeru Miyamoto, he was rejected due to the commercial failure of other Famicom games produced by celebrities. Apparently, Itao was so devastated by the rejection that he reportedly cried on the train ride home. Later on though, he was called back by Miyamoto, who had a change of heart and was willing to give the game a chance. Rushed balancing. Itao has mentioned that towards the end of development, time was very short, so they rushed through the debugging phase and balancing the difficulty of the final area, Mount Itao. In other words, when we got to fine-tuning the difficulty there, I was like, whatever. Too many encounters. The encounter rate in this game is infamously out of control due to the back end of development being rushed. This in turn made much of the early game extremely difficult. It was so much of a problem that modders had created patches specifically to lower the encounter rates and make the game less irritating to casual and hardcore fans alike. Censorship. In the releases after the original Japanese version, Mother 1 is censored in several areas to remove possible offensive material or religious references. For example, the crow enemy had its cigarette removed and had its feathers lightened for some unknown reason. The Devil Truck was renamed Psycho Truck. The bloody wounds that the gang zombie had were also removed. There were many other small changes similar to this. Holiday Towns. The setting in Mother 1, America, has a couple of harmless changes that were made to the town names. In the Japanese version, many of the towns were named after holidays, like the towns of Halloween and Thanksgiving, which were altered to be Spokane and Maryville, respectively. Phil Sandhop himself commented on the naming convention saying, "Itao originally wrote them to sound friendly. I don't believe that town names after holidays was friendly. Matter of fact, I thought it sounded stupid and I thought older players would really be turned off. I wanted it to be enjoyable for all ages." Mother 1 and 2. Mother 1 and 2 is a compilation of the first two games released in Japan for the Game Boy Advance in 2003. It was originally intended to promote the upcoming release of Mother 3 as seen in this commercial. The games are very similar to the originals, but do include some changes. The previously mentioned censorship and ending were added in, but new fonts and sound effects also made their way into this port, since not all of the original were compatible with the GBA hardware. Giga's name. The main antagonist of Mother 1 and Earthbound is commonly known as Gigas by English-speaking fans, but it's a bit more complicated than you'd initially think. In the original Japanese release, his name looks to be Geeg, and then in the Earthbound Beginnings game, this is altered to Jeeg. Finally, in Earthbound, his name internationally is changed to Gigas, but remains Geeg in the Japanese version. And apologies with how much I butchered those pronunciations. Jeeg is Mewtwo. The development team that worked on Mother, Ape Inc., actually went on to form Creatures Inc., who worked on the Pokemon games. For this reason, many fans look at Jeeg and point out the striking similarities between him and the Pokemon Mewtwo. It's possible that the Jeeg design influenced Mewtwo's iconic look. Name in the Cave. When looking at the game's map altogether, it seems like there may be a hidden message in one of the cave systems. If you rotate and move around several caves from the final area in the game, Mount Itao, it very clearly spells out Geeg's name. This may be a coincidence, but if it is, it's quite a wild coincidence. Franklin Badge. Even if you're not a Mother fan, you may still recognize the Franklin Badge as the item in Smash Bros. That lets you reflect projectiles. The iconic Franklin Badge is featured prominently in every entry of the Mother series. So much so that there are different real-life releases of the item for collectors, but for those who are wondering why it's named Franklin Badge, in the game's description shines a bit of light on that question. Legend says that Ben Franklin wore this reflective badge during his experiments with lightning. Perhaps while Ben was flying his kites, he was wearing one of these bad boys. Magicant Secrets. While Nintendo has not yet made his way into Smash Bros. Like NES and Lucas have, the Magicant stage in Super Smash Bros. 3DS and Ultimate is based on the incarnation of Magicant from Mother 1. The stage is full of references from both Mother 1 and Earthbound. The background of the stage will occasionally rip open and show moments from NES and Nintendo's adventure. The flying men appear outside of their house as well, ready to assist whoever fighter touches them first in battle. Dungeon Man also makes an appearance on the stage, and in Smash Ultimate, if you zoom the camera on him, you can see the character Brick Road's face on the wall. Nintendo's name. The main character of Mother 1 is obviously named Nintendo, well, sort of. Originally in the marketing of the game, Nintendo was referred to as Boku, which is me in Japanese. They clearly intended to treat this character as a self-insert. Later on in the Mother 1 novelization, the author decided to name him Ken since there was no established name. So why is he called Nintendo? Well, many times when debugging the game and taking developmental screenshots, Nintendo would name the main character Nintendo as a fun reference or signature. You can even see this in the Japanese instruction manual for The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The name Nintendo, being Mother 1's protagonist, started becoming the proper nomenclature during the late 90s for some unknown reason, and was finally cemented into Super Smash Bros. Brawl, where there is a sticker of him that uses the name Nintendo. Mother Novel. The Mother 1 novelization was written by the same person that worked on the Dragon Quest novels as well as the Mother 2 novel. The book is only in Japanese and covers the events of the game with a bit more detail. Mother 1 album. In August of 1989, a Mother-themed studio album was released on cassette and CD in Japan. Rather than only using the music directly from the game itself, that were based on existing songs in the game. The album was a collaborative effort between popular Japanese star Keiichi Suzuki, along with the chiptune pioneer and future president of Creatures Inc., Hirokazu Tanaka. Vocal work was done by Catherine Warwick, Jeb Milton, and the St. Paul's Cathedral Choir. Interestingly, the lyrics of the album are all written in English because of the original intent to localize the game. Since those plans had changed, the album stayed Japan exclusive until 2015, when Earthbound Beginnings was released internationally on the Wii U. Mother 1 Revisited. In 2021, Keiichi Suzuki composed a reimagined version of the album with Hirokazu Tanaka. One of the original vocal artists returned for this album, and in turn, Suzuki performed all of the lead vocals by himself. You're an inspiration, Charlie Brown. According to Sandhop, the game's graphics and gameplay were both designed to have a Peanuts feel to them. Peanuts is arguably the most influential comic strip in the world, so it's understandable that Itao would use it as an inspiration to create something American audiences would resonate with. This would turn out to be a problem during the translation process, since many sprites had distinct similarities to the Peanuts characters. Fearing a possible lawsuit, the sprites were changed to be much less Peanuts oriented. Mother 1 Commercial. The commercial aired in Japan to advertise the release of the first game. It shows Ninten, Anna, and Lloyd fighting against R7038XX. The end of the credits has the iconic line, "No crying until the end," which would become a staple of the series. Interestingly, the identities of the children that acted in the commercial are unknown. Encyclopedia Mother. This is a book released alongside the original Japanese game that acted as a companion guide to the game. Extremely detailed descriptions of the characters, locations not found in the game are hidden within its pages. Some of the facts are pretty specific, like Ninten's canon blood type being A, and how he spends his time after school. Unused Enemy. In the files of the game, there are 2 unused enemies. Pippi, the temporary party member, and this possessed pillow. The pillow is a typical unused enemy, but Pippi is much more interesting. Her stats are all over the place, most of them are just random low numbers, but her PP stat is absurdly high. This is pretty odd, because if we operate on the assumption that you were intended to fight her before gaining her as a party member, her PP far exceeds that of the amount needed for such an early section of the game. Breadcrumbs. These are an item that, when used, are dropped by Ninten in order to leave a trail. If the crumbs then get used again, it will transport Ninten to the origin of the bread trail. An oversight involving this item allows you to teleport to this normally inaccessible area. This can only be performed in the Japanese version. Keeping Eve. Normally the character Eve is a temporary party member that you lose access to on Mount Itao. You can actually keep her for the rest of your playthrough by performing an odd glitch. The flea bag is an item used to lower an enemy's offense and defense. If you spam this item during the fight with R7038XX, you can make Eve take such low amounts of damage that the fight will reach 255 turns, which is the maximum number a fight can last. At this point, the fight will forcibly finish and Eve will remain in your party even when she should be dead. There are some weird effects of this glitch, one of which is Eve turning into a stack of random NPC sprites. Like many others, this glitch only works in the Japanese version of the game. Several final party setups. Many people finish the game with Ninten, Anna, and Lloyd, but there are actually many different possibilities. For example, Anna is entirely optional, so you could just beat the game with Ninten and Lloyd. You can also beat the game solo with Ninten, but this has a pretty complex setup and is fairly challenging to pull off. The Secret Landmine. In the Yucca Desert, there is a single tile with an event attached to it. If Ninten steps on the tile, a landmine will blow up in his face. You take no damage, and a message will appear, "Keep this place to yourself, please. Signed, Shigesato Itao." Looks like we didn't follow his instructions after all. Mother Encore. This is a fan-made reimagining of the original game. With a new art style and updated gameplay mechanics, it aims to bring Mother 1 a bit closer to Earthbound and Mother 3 in terms of feel. It's currently being developed by a group of extremely dedicated fans, and while a release date hasn't been announced, it seems the development is going smoothly. Mother Encore is planned as a completely free PC release. Phone Call. After the credits of the game, this image of Ninten's father attempting to call him is shown. It would seem that they were setting up a second game where Ninten would presumably appear, although this never happened. This is also relevant because this is the only time we have seen Nintendo's father in the series, making Ness the only main protagonist whose father is completely unseen. Mother 1 was ahead of its time in terms of aesthetic. At a time when RPGs were set in fantasy lands, Mother took a bit of inspiration from Dragon Quest and turned the concept on its head. It was the first domino in a series of complicated events that would help to create a dedicated community, as well as inspire creators to make their own games like Undertale, Eastward, and Omari. Due to fan dedication, Earthbound Beginnings was finally added to the Switch, and it's possible that with even more support, Nintendo will preserve this important piece of gaming history down the line.
Like this video, and subscribe to Maker.